Good afternoon, Metazul. Thank you for accepting the interview from Metazul Fan Club. Tell us how's the day and where are you?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. This is a great honor to be here. And I'm live recording to you from Chachapoyas, Peru. And today was really cool because we went to the Sarcófago de Carajilla, 7 sarcophaguses with mummies inside from pre-Incan times that are still somehow intact today, except for one that fell from an earthquake some years back. But really, really cool. A lot of archaeological sites and waterfalls and beautiful nature in this area.
Nice, thank you for sharing that with us. We saw your Instagram post. There is a new album called Khipu is coming. What is Khipu? I mean, it's a very unique name. And how you find this name?
Khipu actually in Incan language means knot. And quipus themselves were a series of knots tied together in string to tell different kinds of information or to account for different things. Many historians think that they were used to keep track, like an accountant would use them to count maybe how many alpacas or guanacos you had. But other people also think that they may have also been used as maps or musical notes or to tell stories, or they could have even been the language of the Incans before the alphabet or anything like that. That was the Incan way to be able to tell stories or to write. But no one is 100% sure because unfortunately the history was wiped out by the Spanish.
So how you find this name?
So honestly, titles for albums are one of the most difficult things for me to decide, and they always happen at the very end, and always something sparks and I'm like, that's the one, that's the name. But before that, I was thinking to call it No Te Va Gustar, which means you're not going to like it, kind of a sarcastic take on the album. And that was okay, but it was a little wordy, but I thought, all right, if I don't think anything else, then that would be cool. But then we're in a museum actually in Arequipa, Peru, and we went to see Juanita, which is a actually preserved mummy from pre-Incan time. It was a human sacrifice. She was a child and she was found perfectly intact. You can actually go and see her literal body in the museum. It's a little weird, but it's also really, really cool. And in that same museum, they had Khipu. And then right after, as that was happening, I was thinking, wow, that would be a really cool way to symbolize South America. And also it's a way to tell stories, which is basically what my album is. It's telling the story of this journey. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, Khipu, that's so much cooler than the previous name.
You always have very cool pictures on your Instagram, and then so far we all loved your album covers. Project Mayhem and the Telltale Heart is all very unique, beautiful places. So we saw this one, it's also spectacular. So tell us about this album cover, where you take this picture and how you get there.
Another thing that's very difficult is at the album artwork. Always very difficult, especially on this one, because there's so many different experiences tied into this album. I could have chosen a picture from Brazil, Argentina, Patagonia, Bolivia, so many choices, right? And in the past, Project Mayhem is Torres del Paine of Chile, mountains. Rain is Mount Whitney, mountain, California. And then Telltale Heart is actually Tikal, Guatemala. So I wanted to do something different. I didn't want to do another mountain. So I was deciding what to do, maybe a beach of Brazil. And then about the time things were tying up for the album, we were in San Pedro de Atacama in Chile. And we went through Garganta del Diablo, which means the devil's throat. And it was just really cool. No one was out there. It was just a wide open abyss of epic desert. And there was a gust of sandstorm going by in the background. And I was just looking off into the distance, and once I saw that picture, that was the one. It was just epic.
Awesome. What a story. So you have been traveling more than a year, and so how did this album follow your journey? Because when you create an album, you're always thinking, which song goes first, and then, how the sequence of the songs in the album. And how does this journey and your songs come together?
Absolutely. So the track list actually follows the journey exactly. So as I traveled and recorded, that's the order of the songs. So the intro was recorded on one of the first days in Valle de la Luna in La Paz, Bolivia. And it features a Bolivian flutist. And then later I added the vocals to recap the whole experience. From there, it stays in Bolivia with Toro Toro, an interlude, which samples a street vendor from that town. From there, it moves on to Argentina, and then to Uruguay, and then to Brazil, Costa Rica, Rapa Nui, Chile, and Peru. When I listen to the album, it actually really makes me remember this last year in order. So it's really unique in that way, especially for me because I lived it.
Wow, so this album really follows your journey. It's like your travel journey and your music journey all come in one. That is fantastic. So you're on the road, and how you record this song?
So this was a completely remote album. So it was actually recorded all over during this whole last year in various stages. So a lot of times I would record half a song as I went. So I have songs that were recorded in Rio de Janeiro, Buenos Aires, El Calafate, Santiago, Rapa Nui, Costa Rica, etc. Just as I went, I kept writing, even if it was only a half song that I completed. And then towards the end of it, when I was finishing up, I spent 2 weeks in Puerto Varas finishing every single knot, tying every last knot together on this album. So I have a lot of half songs or 3/4 songs that were recorded along the way over the last year, and then everything was finished up in 2 weeks in Puerto Varas, Chile. And then luckily I have really awesome engineers. Shout out to Timeflex, Michael the Man, and I Am Young. I sent them over the files, and then they cleaned them up. And luckily the files were good enough and the takes were good enough where they could work with it and make it sound quality.
Awesome. So we heard before, Telltale Heart is very personal, and lots of personal, feels and experiences. How is the vibe of this project?
So in certain ways it's the same, certain ways it's very different. So Telltale Heart, I challenged myself to make some very personal songs, which I don't really like to do, especially when I was first starting out. I hated being personal in my art, very vulnerable, very difficult to do, honestly, as an artist. But I challenged myself with that to tell stories from the heart, Telltale Heart. So half of the songs were very personal and very real and very from me, being honest and open and transparent with the listener. And then the other half were made up and fun or just inventive stories. But the central theme was various stories, whether real, fake, made up, what have you. This song is not personal. This album follows the journey. It's more about the experience. It's about the place. There are songs about Brazil, Rapa Nui, Costa Rica, and the vibe of those places, and the vibe of travel, and the vibe of the last year's experience, rather than a personal story from my past or a made-up story or this or that. And it's still very poetic. What I would say the same is both albums still have the full spectrum of emotions. And in this album, Khipu, there are moments of sadness, melancholy, anger, happiness, joy, love, mystique, mystery, pure rap. There's a little bit of everything, which I love to do. I think that's what an album is. It's the full human experience. I don't like to have an album where all the songs follow the same vibe or have the same feeling, because then I kind of think it blends together and it gets boring. I like to really show your humanity in an album.
Yes, well said. As a human being, we all have different type of feelings, different type of perspective of our life as well. And it's very brave as an artist to expose yourself, be naked spiritually.
Right.
To show the world and then show people your vulnerability, your strength, your experience, your life. So it's a very brave thing to do, and then we admire you, and then you thank you for sharing you and your music with this world, and you make this world much more beautiful with your music. And so we received a lot of questions in Metazul fan club, and then we all looking forward to this album, but due to time limit, I'm going to ask 3 questions I picked up from the Metazul fan club. And the first is, can you find someone who can read a Khipu?
So the ancient Khipus have certain interpretations, but a lot of the culture was erased through history. So no one knows 100% sure how to read a Khipu. However, in certain pueblos, people there still actually do use Khipus to keep track of how many, for example, llamas or alpacas that they have, so that we know those are able to be read by those people because they're still creating them. And the people actually that make and interpret the Khipus, they're called Khipu Kamayaks. So those people actually still do exist, and they're still used, the Khipus, today. But the ancient ones, there's no one that can say for sure what they mean.
Very, very interesting. So the second question is, which song touches your heart?
As far as touching my heart, 2 songs on this album particularly touch my heart. And that's gonna be Sublime, because it's very raw, honest emotion, very intimate, very sweet, very kind, very honest love song. The second one that really touches my heart, and for a very different reason, is going to be called Bullet Points, which talks about school shootings, and it talks about it from the perspective of the deceased children from the shooting of a school.
Well, they are indeed very opposite.
Yes.
Sounds sad and love, and we are looking forward to hear them. So the third question is, how was it writing songs in multiple languages for this project? Because we all know you are fluent in Spanish and of course English. And then, so how's the multi-language on this project?
So it was a new challenge. I spent about 3 months in Brazil. So I thought it was only natural to try to write a song, not only for the album, but also to help my language to be able to communicate with the people while I'm there traveling in Brazil, right? So it was a challenge at first, but luckily with my background of Spanish, I have an idea of how to do the conjugations and things like that. And luckily for that song, a friend of mine who's also featured on the album, Mariana, helped me with certain things in the pronunciation to have it so that it was really good. But for the most part, being in Brazil, knowing some Spanish, and also learning myself really helped me to add this song in Portuguese. Additionally, there's another hook in Rapa Nui language on the Rapa Nui song itself, and that song is a very ritualistic hook using Rapa Nui language. And the only reason that ended up happening was because on the flight to that island, we had a magazine and we read through it, and they had some words like ahu, moe, ariki, like statue, platform, king, etc. And I wrote them down to remember them. And then later I had found a perfect ritualistic beat to put it on that I thought fit super well. And then adding that to it sounds really great. And then lastly, there's an interlude sung by a group singing at Iguazu Falls on the Argentina side, and they're singing in Guarani language.
Wow, sounds amazing. Rich cultural, different languages, and South America and Central America journey. What an amazing experience. So we are looking forward to this album, Khipu. So thank you so much for your time, and then thanks again to creating music and inspiration.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to share this album with you all. It's going to be dropping March 3rd, this Friday coming up, And I hope you take a listen, hope you like it, and it's my honor to be able to share this experience with you all.
Thank you.